Okay, so this lesson is going to be about calculating the slope and finding the slope. So I know you've talked about slope several times. I'm quite specific about how I like slope being discussed, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about it. So in this box, we're going to be talking about positive slope. In this box, we're going to talk about negative slope. Here we're going to talk about zero slope, and here we're going to talk about no slope. Okay? So different things about them. First of all, positive and negative slopes, I think you're pretty okay with. So we have our coordinate board, right? And you have a line that has a positive slope. So perhaps it looks like this, okay? And so what that means is your slope is going to be rising. Your line is going to be rising from left to right when you read. Okay, that's something you need to know about positive slope, rising from left to right. What does a positive slope look like? Well, when you have your equation, y equals mx plus b, this number is going to be positive. So it could be negative, could be not negative for sure. If it's a positive slope, it's going to be something like 7, or rise 1 and run 3, or rise 5 and run 2. Anyway, these are all positive values. Whether they're greater or less than 1, we're definitely going to be rising up 1 over 3 or up 5 over 2. They're all positive, okay? Positive slope, rising left to right. Pretty simple, okay? Negative slope. So again, we have our coordinate board and we have our negative slope. This time, our line is going to be going downward in the negative direction. Again, that is from left to right, so it's going to be falling from left to right. So as we read across our page, left to right, this line is falling. As we read in this one, from left to right, our line is rising as we go across the page. So this is a negative slope, okay? Again, when you look at it in y equals mx plus b form, this is going to be a negative value. -4, -5, -3 over 2, -4, -1/3. It doesn't matter. They're all negative values. Again, falling and running, falling and running. So what's important to remember about positive and negative slope is if it's a fraction and it's positive, you're rising some and you're running to the right. You're rising and you're running. You're rising and you're running. This one is falling and running, falling and running, falling and running. So you notice that every single time we're running, we run to the right. Okay, so remember that slope is rise over run. This run is always to the right. So we're going up and to the right, up and to the right, or down and to the right, down and to the right. So the negative value here goes with the numerator because that's telling you to fall 5 and run 1. This is telling you to fall 3 and run 2. This is telling you to fall 4 and run 1. This is telling you to fall 1 and run 3. That negative does not get repeated with the numerator and the denominator because that would make it a negative over a negative and that would turn it into a positive slope. We don't want that. So be really careful. The positive and the negative goes with the rise. If it's positive, we're going up. If it's negative, we're going down. We always, always run to the right, okay? Zero slope on our coordinate board is a line that is neither rising nor falling, okay? From left to right on our page, it is not rising nor falling. So neither rising or falling. Neither rising or falling from left to right. Its slope is 0. And 0 times x means that my answer to this right here is going to be 0 at all times, which means there is no x term in these equations, okay? There's no x term. The reason is because we've multiplied it by 0 and it's gone. So if you have y equals 7, or you have the equation y equals 4, or you have the equation y equals -2, those are all examples of 0 slope. There's no x term in those equations. It's just y equals. And that number b is telling you where it's crossing the y-axis. So this line would be up here at 4, right? And you just make it a flat line of 0, flat line, okay? So always horizontal. Always horizontal, super important. No slope. We also call this undefined. Undefined. Reason being, if we show you what the picture of a no slope line looks like, it's going to be going vertically. And it is impossible to describe a line that is rising and falling at the same time. Rising and falling at the same time. We can't describe that. There's no way to put a number on that. Well, how much is it rising or falling? I don't know. It's going forever and ever in both directions. I don't know how far it's going to rise or fall. And I don't know what the change in the y value is. And that's really how we define slope. So this is rising and falling at the same time. And when you're looking at our equation of a line, it's going to say, sorry, it's not going to say y. There's no y value in it. It's going to say x equals some number. So my equations in this one are going to say x equals -2, or x equals 3, or x equals 7. And these are vertical lines. Really, really important. You know the difference. Vertical is no slope. Horizontal is a 0 slope, okay? So an undefined line or a defined line. Now, when you're actually finding slope, and we're going to talk about the equation in a second, when you get an undefined, you're going to get some number over 0, and you can't divide by 0. That's how you know that your answer is undefined, okay? Over here, you're going to get 0 divided by some number, and the answer to that is always 0. So this is just going to be a 0 slope. So that's the difference between the two, okay? All right, let's go to the next page and talk just for a second a little bit more about the rest of the slope stuff. And that is the equation and how to calculate it, okay? So interpreting slope. So write it as a fraction, and then the numerator tells you whether you're rising or falling, and the denominator tells you how far to run. So remember that slope is rise over run, okay? And this is your formula for slope right here. Rise over run, okay? This is the positive or negative part, the rise, right? Positive means we're going up. Negative means we're going down. That's what the numerator tells you. Positive means up. Negative means down, okay? The denominator, this part, tells you the run. So to the right, because we always read left to right, and so it tells you how many units to the right. Okay, so let's practice giving these 2 points. I'm going to give you these points, 5, 0, and -3, 2. So when you get ready to plug them into your equation, what you're going to do is you're going to remember that this is your x1 value and this is your x2 value. So this is the x coordinate of your first point and the x coordinate of your second point. And this is the y coordinate of your first point and the y coordinate of your second point. And then you can plug them into the equation. y2 minus y1. They're basically saying, tell me the difference between your y coordinates. 2 minus 0 over, then x2 minus x1. So subtract your x coordinates. Negative 3 minus 5. Negative 2 minus 0 is, or 2 minus 0 is 2. Negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8. Now, we have to talk about this because the negative is in the denominator right now. So I want to know 2 divided by negative 8, negative 2 divided by 8. Are they the same thing? 2 divided by 8 is going to give you some value regardless, but positive divided by a negative is a negative. Negative divided by positive is a negative. So these are exactly the same. So what I'm going to ask you to do is when you get a negative in the denominator like that, I'm going to ask you to rewrite it so it says negative 2 over 8, because this negative is really telling me that I'm going to go down 2, because this is a negative line, and I'm going to run 8. Down 2, run 8. Okay? So I want you to be very careful about how you write slope. It's important that you understand that it doesn't matter if the negative gets moved up or down, because this is still going to result in a negative value either way. I haven't changed the numbers, I've just changed the sign. Positive divided by a negative is the same thing as a negative divided by a positive. The only time you have to be careful is when they're both negative like this. And that's just going to be easy because a negative divided by a negative is going to turn it into a positive. So there isn't going to be any question about what we do with two negatives. Okay? So that is slope in a nutshell.